Ah, the 50s, the golden age of TV, comics, drive-in theaters, propaganda, and especially rock and roll. This era-defining genre would soon evolve into rock, which would transform into punk and metal, and even lay down the foundation for modern pop. Artists like Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, and Jerry Lee Lewis were crucial in pioneering this sound. But while their influence on music was undeniable, they weren't exactly the best people behind the scenes. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some abhorrent acts, including the abuse of hard and illegal drugs and exploitation of women and minors. If this sounds like this would be too heavy for you, feel free to click off now. Otherwise, let's jump into the video. Jerry Lee Lewis, also known by his stage name The Killer, was regarded as rock and roll's first great wild man. His shows ranged from screaming aggressively to playing the piano with his fists, elbows, and feet, and was also even rumored to destroy and light pianos on fire. His influence on the performative side of rock was unmatched and went on to inspire attitudes and performances seen in metal and punk. Additionally, he's been awarded numerous Grammys while also being inducted into the Grammy and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, like many of his contemporaries, he was not a great guy. Jerry Lee Lewis had a great career up until one teensy little mistake. He married his 13-year-old cousin. At the age of 22, he married Myra Gale Brown, his 13-year-old first cousin once removed. To make things worse, he was already married to another woman. When the public found out about this, his mainstream success and reputation imploded overnight, and he was blackballed by the industry for decades. His relationship with Myra was also abusive, with him regularly hitting her and controlling every aspect of her life. Jerry Lee Lewis was also careless and abusive to other people in his life as well. His major drug and alcohol addiction made him unpredictable, and to make things worse, he was a gun fanatic. In 1976, he accidentally shot his bassist in the chest, and in the same year, he showed up to Elvis Presley's house drunk, screaming at his guards outside, "Tell him the killer is here to see him." There's also questionable deaths with 2 of his 7 wives that he had, with one drowning in a pool before their divorce was finalized, and the other dying from a methadone overdose just 77 days after getting married. Now, no one knows if there was any foul play, but if your nickname is The Killer, I don't know what you expect people to think about that. Jerry Lee Lewis's career was complicated and filled with scandals, and he never reflected or apologized publicly for any of these things. He died in 2022 at the age of 87, and by the time he was in his late 70s, people just didn't care anymore and saw him as the legend of rock and roll as he was. Next up is the infamous king of rock and roll. Elvis was the most crucial artist in making rock and roll more palatable to mainstream audiences. Although he was a beloved figure across America, his unprecedented dancing was considered to be offensive and overtly sexual. Many critics of Elvis claimed that he benefited from segregation in the music industry without challenging it or bringing its injustices to attention. Major record labels pushed him as the safe face of rock and roll. He eventually became the face of a genre that wasn't originally his to begin with. In the late 50s, Elvis was drafted and sent to Germany, where he met his future wife at the age 14. After 7 years, he married her, resulting in his most controversial marriage. Once they split up 6 years later, she came out to say he controlled the way she dressed and actively limited her social life and independence. It's also widely considered that Elvis groomed her for years before they even got married. Another weird thing about Elvis is that he lost interest in women once he thought they were impure. After Priscilla had their baby, he fell out of love with her, and he was said to leave other women just as abruptly once he knew they weren't innocent. Throughout his life, Elvis was a ladies' man, personally getting involved with almost every woman around him, even teenagers. At the same time, he was a serial cheater and chronically addicted to sleeping pills, opiates, and alcohol. Much like Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis also was obsessed with guns. If he didn't like what was on TV, it wasn't out of the ordinary for him to just shoot the screen. His fascination with authority ran deep as well. He was a big fan of the police and armed forces, obsessed with law enforcement culture, even claimed at one point he wanted to crack down on drug-addicted hippies. At one point, he managed to secure an honorary DEA badge. In 1977, at just 42 years old, Elvis was found dead on the floor of his bathroom. The autopsy revealed that his body was packed with sleeping pills, painkillers, sedatives, and more. His legacy remains complicated, and although he was a very controversial figure, he is still regarded as an American icon. Now finally, the father of rock and roll himself. Chuck Berry is one of the most influential artists of all time. He essentially created the format of rock and roll, birthing songs like Johnny B. Good and Roll Over Beethoven, which are considered to be some of the best rock songs of all time. Although he never reached mainstream success like Elvis, his contributions to the genre remain unmatched. But like everyone else on this list, he is just as controversial. In 1959, while in Mexico, he met 14-year-old Janice Escalante and illegally brought her over the Mexican border to his club in St. Louis. She was eventually arrested for prostitution, and Chuck Berry was charged with the Mann Act, which prohibited transporting minors across state lines for illegal purposes. Afterwards, he would go on to serve 20 months in prison. It wasn't until 30 years later in 1990 where he would go on to be sued by multiple women, claiming that he recorded them in the bathroom in the restaurant he owned. But they also found underage sensitive material as well. Chuck Berry was also a hard musician to work with, often verbally abusing his bandmates and humiliating them even if they missed one note. Despite his controversial past, music historians claim that a lot of his scandals were overblown or dealt with disproportionately to his colleagues because he was black. And I do think there is some merit to this. Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis committed crimes that were just as bad, but they didn't see any legal repercussion from them. Aside from all of the controversies, Chuck Berry still remains the father of rock and roll, and his influence on the genre is unmatched to any artist. Overall, the 50s was an era for new media, and rock and roll was the genre that pushed music to its boundaries. Even though many of the pioneers of this genre were flawed and incredibly disturbed people, their influence can still be heard in music today. It was a different time, and while a lot of wrongs were overlooked back then, it's important that we're able to recognize and call them out today, instead of ignoring them like before. So that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Thank you for watching.